Hey guys, what is up? Today I wanted to continue on with the thought that I was sharing in my previous video. So last time I mentioned I have had a couple of realizations here recently that have helped improve my success rate when it comes to inducing out-of-body experiences. And I shared the last one with you in my last video, so today is to cover that second realization that I had. Now, it's going to be a quick video. This is a super simple, easy idea that somehow I just had never stumbled across until here recently. I will tell you that this whole idea revolves around the use of the indirect method for projection. So if you're not familiar with the indirect method, I've got a link down in the description below where I cover that from start to finish. And if you find at any point that you've got questions or that this video is not making sense or you get confused or lost, maybe go and watch that one first. Come back, watch this one, and I guarantee it will make more sense. So this idea came to me as I was reading The Phase by Michael Raduga, or I should say rereading The Phase for probably the 12th time. And something stuck out at me this time as I was reading the latest edition of his book. In the latest edition, he really spends a lot of time emphasizing the importance of using forced falling asleep, is what he calls it, to get yourself back into a place where you can produce the separation. Now, forced falling asleep is something he's mentioned in his previous editions, his previous prints of his book, but for some reason he just really emphasizes it quite a bit in this latest edition, and so it struck me and made me think I really need to give this another try. So the idea behind this, if I understand it correctly, is that you think back to a time in your life where you've had a limited number of hours to sleep, but it's incredibly important that you do sleep for those hours because you want to be awake and alert the next day, for example. So instead of, maybe the normal nighttime process that you go through where you lay down or you read or you think about your day at work or whatever you do, you just lay down and through sheer just intent, you just shut off your mind, force yourself to relax, start breathing deeply, and just conk out within a couple of minutes. And so that would be forced falling asleep. Now the idea of using this forced falling asleep as a projection method, you don't actually want to fall asleep. So this is different than the micro sleep that I've talked about before. This is use this technique for just a few moments to get yourself back close to that awake asleep threshold, and then stop, and then maintain control over your level of alertness, awareness, your consciousness. And he says you can use this anytime you get stuck. So if you feel like this process isn't continuing, use forced falling asleep. If you feel like you've woken up and your awakening was too alert, use forced falling asleep. If you're cycling through techniques and they just don't seem to be going anywhere, use forced falling asleep. Now, I will tell you that I am incredible at the falling asleep part. I can just conk right out within a couple of minutes, no problem. It is that retaining control over my state of consciousness that I have struggled with ever since I started trying this technique. So I thought I would try it again. I thought, due to the amount of importance that he's putting on it, I should give it another shot. So I went about this the same way that I always do. I wake up at 3 in the morning. I write down my dreams, get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, splash some water on my face, wake myself up a little bit, and by 3:30 in the morning, I'm back in bed. Now this wake back to bed method I've talked about before. This is incredibly important to improve your success rate. And what this does for the indirect method is it results in you waking up spontaneously throughout the night more often, because when you go back to sleep, you don't fall back asleep as deeply as you would have if you just slept, all the way through the night. And so you wake up more times, spontaneously, which gives you more opportunities to employ the indirect method and produce this separation. So I did this, and I came back to bed. My intent was, when I wake up, I'm going to use this forced falling asleep method, and I'm going to hopefully retain some level of control over my consciousness. So I woke up, and I didn't use forced falling asleep. I actually I had woken up from what was actually a lot of fun. It was a dream that I was having where I was jumping from building top to building top, not exactly flying, but doing these enormous jumps, and gravity was just not pulling me down very quickly. I was just kind of floating down. And it was so much fun that I thought, I'm going to try to just lay here completely still and remember every detail of this dream so that I can write it in my dream journal. And then I'll worry about this forced falling asleep next time. So I wake up, I remain absolutely still, don't move at all, and I continue on with this same breathing pattern that I have when I'm sleeping, because I've learned a long time ago that using the sleep breathing, this breathing pattern that matches the breathing that I do when I'm asleep, will keep me closer to that awake asleep threshold. And I was, my intent was to remember more and more of this dream before it gets too, foggy or hazy. So I'm laying still, I keep on going with the sleep breathing, and all I did was turn my attention to my dream and just start thinking about it and trying to remember every detail of it. And completely unintentional, what happened next was, as I mentioned in my last video, I start hearing this low pulsating zump, zump, zump. And I know exactly where this is leading, and I just let it build, and it turns into the roaring in my head, it turns into the vibrations, and not intending to at all, I mean, at least not intending to get to this point, the vibrations hit, and I decide, yeah, I'm just going to roll out of body, so I do. And my first thought when I got out was, that was easy. And my second thought was, boy, I hope that wasn't a fluke and that I can do that again. So I go out, and when I come back, I go back to sleep. The normal process when you use the indirect method, where you go back to sleep and then you try to rely on your next awakening to employ this technique again and then get out a second time, a third time, and so on. So the next time I tried the exact same thing. I woke up, I remained absolutely still, kept going with my sleep breathing, and all I did was think about the dream I had just woken up from. And I'll tell you that 9 out of 10 times when I have a spontaneous awakening, I've just come out of REM sleep and I've got a dream that's fresh in my head, so this was an easy thing to do. And it seemed to, and it worked, and it seemed to be the combination of not moving, maybe the breathing helps, don't know, I've been doing it anyway because it seems to work. But the trick here seems to be thinking about my dream immediately when I wake up, and it seems to be the combination of all of those things is enough to trick my body or my mind or both into thinking that maybe I'm still asleep. And so this process just kicks off on its own, and it's the same process that I'm familiar with when I go through the cycles of techniques, but this is by far more effective for me, like at least twice as effective as cycling through techniques and trying to get myself back into this awake asleep state, through things like phantom wiggling and forced movement and rotation and listening into auditory noises and all these things like this. Just laying there, just thinking about my dream, staying still, and just breathing in a relaxed way. It has been enough to just kick this process off more often than anything else I've ever come across. So that's it. Like I said, super simple and easy, and somehow I've just never stumbled across this before because I don't spend an awful lot of time just laying completely still thinking about dreams when I wake up. I usually wake up, I get out of bed, and then I start writing down my dreams. So I would love to hear if anybody else tries this and you get to the point where you can wake up, remain completely still, and turn your attention immediately to this idea of projection and thinking about dreams. I'd love to hear if this works for anybody else or if I'm unique in this particular scenario. But that is it for now. As always, like, comment, subscribe, help me build this community. I will talk to you guys again soon.